Possibly the worst video game Nintendo has had the misfortune to publish. Avoid at all costs. This is disgracefully bad. It's hard to believe that the critics at Eurogamer would direct such scathing words towards an innocuous Mario game. But at the time, they weren't the only ones. In fact, the consensus was quite clear. But how did this even happen? How did Nintendo release a product that was so universally hated that we're still hearing the echoes of disappointment to this very day? Let's find out together, shall we? I have always considered my browser to be a means to an end, a tool that gets me from point A to point B like a Toyota Camry. But instead, Opera GX, the sponsor for this video, is like the Lamborghini of the browser world. It's big, it's loud, it's obnoxious, and it's packed to the gills with gaudy and ridiculous features. You can customize every single aspect of the browser with GX mods. You can browse the GX store, and they even have mods that align with my stupid and terrible taste, for instance Garfield, or Yeek a Postmodern RPG. And these mods have their own background music, keyboard sounds, tab sounds, color themes, wallpapers, and the ability to tweak them to your exact specifications. In the GX corner, there are GX Games, which is a collection of indie games that are personally curated, and you can play them right in Opera GX. And completely genuinely, Ubercat Overdrive is one of the best games I've played this year. But now Opera GX is even smarter, because you can click this button right here, and it opens up a panel that goes straight to ChatGPT, and I can ask it this particular question, and ooh, yikes. You convinced yet? Smash that link in the description to check out Opera GX for yourself. I'll be the first to admit that I am not a big Nintendo fan. I'm not usually one to go out of my way to defend the company or their games, but regardless of my feelings, the Mario franchise has a legacy of exceptional quality. It represents nothing short of the gold standard for video games, but having a reputation that strong is as much of a curse as it is a blessing. Nintendo is always under the microscope, and if they slip from their status quo even the tiniest bit, the wave of criticism will be swift and unforgiving. There is no period in Nintendo history where that was more true than in the early 2000s. The Y2K era of Nintendo spoke to me so much because they were completely unpredictable. The games they would release would be so esoteric and experimental to the point of being downright bizarre, because that's just what they did. That's what Nintendo was good at. And yet, simultaneously, fans had never been more divided. Every single major Nintendo release was met with backlash, which if you look at the big picture from back then, it actually wasn't that unreasonable. Nintendo had set a precedent of making a promise and then delivering something completely different to what they promised. When the GameCube was announced at Space World 2000, they showed some demos to prove what the console was capable of. Among those demos were Meowth's Dance Party, Link battling Ganondorf, and Super Mario 128. Fans came away from the event excited for a new GameCube Pokemon game, a beautiful new Zelda game, and the long-awaited sequel to Super Mario 64. But instead, what actually ended up releasing was a spin-off Pokemon game where you watch TV with Pikachu, a squishy cartoon Zelda game that seemingly came out of nowhere, and a Mario game where you roleplay as a janitor to clean up slime and graffiti. There's nothing wrong with putting out a teaser, of course, but these teasers accentuated the already prevalent issue of Nintendo's marketing being misaligned from the actual product. Gamers felt like they were being misled, and you can't really blame them. Nintendo said they were making a Kirby game for GameCube. All right, Kirby game on the GameCube, this is gonna rock. No, just kidding, it's a spin-off kart racing game. They announced a new Yoshi game for Game Boy Advance. Yeah, we love Yoshi, but what they didn't say is that you have to tilt the Game Boy Advance all over the place in order to play it. And when they said they were making a Donkey Kong game for GameCube, fans were raising their eyebrows like, surely this one's not gonna be normal, right? No, of course not. You have to plug in a stupid bongo controller and slap the bongos and clap your hands like an ape. And that is how you play the video game. Back then, the dissonance between Nintendo and their fans was palpable. It took a long time for Nintendo and the fans to see the GameCube era as anything but a failure, when, ironically, they had never been more ambitious. There were so many games from the time that are absolutely irreplaceable. Animal Crossing, Chibi Robo, Luigi's Mansion. When it comes to experimentation, you have to take the good with the bad. The jump from Super Metroid to Metroid Prime was so insanely huge that I'm very willing to forgive some wonky controls and some weak storytelling. But because people were already unhappy with with Nintendo at the time, critics would take tiny missteps like that very personally, which is especially bizarre in retrospect now that these games are heralded as absolute masterpieces. All of the anger that people had towards Wind Waker on release faded away as time went on, and now is considered to be not only one of the best of the series, but one of the greatest video games of all time pretty much universally. Surely that would imply that these games were always great, and it was just a difference in perspective that prevented people from seeing that. But what's even more weird is when you consider the Nintendo games from that era, where the generally accepted opinion never got any sort of revision, and the subject of this video fits perfectly into that description. In 2005, Nintendo released Mario Party Advance for the Game Boy Advance, and it's one of the most unique, misunderstood, and avant-garde Nintendo games of the last 20 years. It's a game that's very difficult to categorize, and that is exactly the problem. Mario Party and party games in general are fast-paced multiplayer experiences. You're supposed to have your friends over, pass out the controllers, and compete with each other. It's a Mario game that you play when you're having a party. So when Nintendo releases a game called Mario Party Advance, you would anticipate that it is Mario Party on the Game Boy Advance. And the marketing even reflected that. But the game that actually released is not that. Not even close. It's a single-player, story-based experience where you explore a wacky board game world, go on fetch quests, solve puzzles, play minigames, and earn collectibles. So when players bought the game, rightfully anticipating for it to be Mario Party, and discovered that it wasn't what they were promised, they left a bad review. And as a result of that, Mario Party Advance holds a literal Guinness World Record for worst received Mario game. This game is so verifiably hated, it's fascinating. But you know how public opinion on Wind Waker gradually shifted to be in favor of the game? Mario Party Advance, even though it was from the same time in Nintendo history and suffered a similar fate, still manages to be in a permanent state of bad game deadlock to this very day. Does that mean it's an exception? Is it actually just a bad game and that's why people still hate it? To answer that question directly, no, it is just a marketing issue. Nintendo's absolute weakest links from the time were their PR and their marketing. It felt like when fans wanted Nintendo to zig, they would zag every single time, and it was really frustrating. And it didn't help that their products were too unpredictable to actually market properly. How do you market Chibi Robo, Doshin the Giant, Cubivore? These games are masterpieces, but they're literally so weird that they're impossible to market, so they ended up failing commercially. I am obviously very willing to believe that Mario Party Advance began its development as a handheld version of Mario Party, but I imagine they ran into some technical issues and some game design challenges that required them to rework it from the ground up, and that's why the early marketing doesn't line up with the final product and why fans felt like they were being misled. But ultimately, the only reason this game is hated is because of the title. It opens the door to comparing it to a series of games it is nothing like. And that's not the fault of the fans, and that's not the fault of the critics. It is the fault of Nintendo, because a spin-off should never stray from the source material as much as Mario Party Advance does while still sporting the name. As far as I'm concerned, that is a valid criticism, but I've seen over and over again that at the time and in retrospect, gamers do not have the ability to look at this game in a vacuum. It cannot be considered on its own merits. So I've taken matters into my own hands. This game is now called Mario's Carnival Quest. It features Mario and friends. The word carnival sums up the setting of Shroom City well enough, and quest implies it's an adventure game and not a party game. This is not a Mario Party game. Maybe it was at some point early in its development, but that's not the product that was released, so the original title's gotta go. If you're looking for Mario Party content, look elsewhere, because this is Mario's Carnival Quest, a different game entirely, as it always should have been. With all of that out of the way, oh my god, we can actually talk about the content of the video game instead of just everything that surrounds it. Mario's Carnival Quest begins by welcoming us to Party World, a magical place dedicated to partying high above the sky with lots of games and gadgets for everyone to play with. But peace would not be held for long as Bowser and Koopa Kid attack. All the games and gadgets are stomped from Toad's hold and dropped straight down to Shroom City below. The Shroom City residents discover the games and gadgets that mysteriously fell from above and take them for themselves. So Mario and friends have to trek through Shroom City and talk to the locals and do whatever it takes to convince them to give the games and gadgets back and return Party World to its former glory. Of course, Bowser holds some of the precious gadgets for himself, and he's the final target after dealing with Shroom City's residents. Mario's Carnival Quest is a single-player adventure RPG. The primary gameplay loop consists of navigating a wacky board game world, showing up at a location in Shroom City, talking to characters, and going on a quest for them. These quests can be as simple as completing a minigame, fetching some item they need, or even answering a trivia question in exchange for a gadget. But on the opposite end, you have quests that are exceptionally unique and weird, which end up being the highlight of the game. This is an RPG, so there are a lot of characters, and you spend a lot of time talking to them. Thankfully, paying attention to the characters in this game isn't difficult to do because the dialogue is concise and interesting. It isn't designed to have too much depth, but there is a story to be found, and there are some plot threads you can trace between quests. One of the major plot threads that goes throughout the entire game is Toad Force 5. It's this anime that everyone in Shroom City is raving about. You don't get to actually watch the show, but you do end up picking up little details about characters and the plot just by interacting with people that are more than happy to nerd out about it to you. And you have to actually pay attention to this in-universe fictional TV show because some residents won't hand over a gadget to you unless you can recite specific Toad Force 5 trivia. There are some recurring characters that are a lot of fun, like Shroomlock. He's a detective and a self-proclaimed master of deductive reasoning. But the whole joke is that he's generally incapable. Either the pieces he fits together are so incredibly obvious, or he takes credit for the solution the player came up with. The way they set up his dialogue with the other Shroom City residents is really funny, and it's always a delight to see him wander up to the scene. My favorite quest with him is the bank heist. You roll up to the bank where there's been a robbery, but there were only 3 people at the scene, and it was pitch black when the crime was done. You go and do an interview with the 3 suspects, and you can tell who's lying because they claimed they saw something, but they couldn't have seen anything because it was pitch black in there.
It was Paratroopa all along! Case closed, he's going to jail.
And of course, we can't forget about another recurring character called Mr. E. He loves unsolved Mr. E's and will spontaneously appear at the site of one where he contributes absolutely nothing. But as soon as the situation becomes a little dicey, he's a total coward, and just as quick as he appeared, he's gone. My favorite scene with him is when he wants to solve the mystery of the locked treasure chest. When you unlock it, we find out he is not invested in the actual treasure whatsoever. In fact, he completely loses interest because the element of mystery is gone, and soon enough, so is he. Goodbye, Mr. E. There's a bunch of fascinating ways the game interacts with the player using these characters. One that sticks out to me the most is when you talk to the Bob-ombs, they tell you there's a secret base that Big Bob-omb is hiding in, and I want to meet him. So you're given the runaround to prove yourself. You gotta go learn the password and then bring it back to him. And when you do, he gives you a hint as to how to access the secret basement in the Mushroom Condo. When you roll up to the condo, you have to highlight the blank space beneath all of the floors and select it. And then that takes you to the secret basement where the Bob-omb gang is. That is insanely cool, and it made me feel so clever for finding it as a kid. This game puts a pretty big exclamation mark on unrequited love, and it's hilarious. There's this one quest where Pedal Guy has a crush on Flutter, and you have to deliver his love poem to her. But when you get to Flutter's place, it turns out that Pedal Guy followed you, and he busts into her house to profess his love to her in person, which creeps her out so bad that she leaves her own home and leaves Pedal Guy in there. Like he's still in there. He's in her house. But she just can't catch a break, okay? Because when you talk to her on her own, she says that she has a crush on this other guy, and you gotta go talk to him, where you find out that he is a literal giant eyeball and is also not interested in her. And you have to go back to give her the bad news that she got rejected by an eyeball. I can't imagine what that would do to someone's ego. And Mr. I, he doesn't even care that he broke this girl's heart because he has a crush on Princess Peach. And so you have to switch to Princess Peach and talk to him, and he fanboys out super hard and professes his undying love to her. And shockingly, Princess Peach does not, in fact, want to date a giant floating eyeball. So Peach is just enabling Mr. Eye's unhealthy parasocial affection for her to get one step closer to saving Party World. I just feel really bad for Flutter. She's really going through it right now because she got creeped on and she got her heart broken. There's this really cute quest where you meet a dolphin comedian and he's having trouble getting people to laugh at his jokes. So you have to listen carefully and press A to laugh at the punchlines. But if you laugh at the wrong time, you'll fail the quest because everyone will know you're faking it. Another one that I really like is when Sniffit moved into a house specifically because it was haunted and was very disappointed when he didn't see any ghosts. So you have to go over to the haunted graveyard and ask the ghost what's up, and they're just like, oh, yeah, we forgot we were supposed to haunt that place. We'll be right there. The ghosts show up and Sniffit is ecstatic. He's so excited. I love that this game doesn't take itself too seriously, and there are so many quests that reflect that casual style of humor. The biggest reward for progressing the game is getting to see Bowser, because the Bowser quests are gradually unlocked as you complete missions. In the same way they flesh out the personalities of all these goofy Mario enemies, Bowser gets very much the same treatment. He's super likable and silly, and his dialogue and quests are just awesome. Here's a few of my favorites. Bowser challenges the player to shoot 3 soccer balls into the goal while he's the goalie. But the joke is that you have to just kick it right between his legs and you'll get the goal every time. Bowser goes to Mount Frostbite. He's covered in snow and freezing, and you have to tell him jokes to warm him up. But then my favorite Bowser quest of them all, you, the player, have to marry Bowser. You think I'm joking. You think I'm pulling your leg. I'm not, and I'm very grateful that I'm not. You go on a romance quest, and you have to bring Bowser the perfect gift. He gives you a riddle, which when deciphered, shows that you have to buy a ring and bring it back to him and propose. I think the joke is supposed to be that no one would want to marry Bowser because he's like a scary monster, but the joke's on them because I put the ring on his finger. The King of the Koopas is my husband now, and we're in love. This game is so earnestly quirky and weird. I love it. It feels like it was made for me. And it would be a major disservice for me to highlight every single cool quest in the game because I want you guys to play this for yourselves. This game rocks. Now, this is the part where we have to ask the question, why in the world is this game so hated? I already described all the external circumstances that caused so much distaste out of the gate, the marketing, the fandom, people's expectations, etc., etc. But is there anything about the game's design itself that could cause so much hatred? Well, there definitely are some things that are worth criticizing, and I'll get to that. But even the scathing review that Eurogamer put out couldn't give me a hint as to what those things could be. This review consistently mentions bad design while dancing around the topic of actually determining what design decisions didn't work. Instead, the author would rather superficially label every activity they engaged with as stupid and dumb and boring. How many games does the tubby plumber and his dysfunctional friends need to star in exactly? If it's not extremely obvious, this review wasn't made with the intent of criticizing a piece of art. It was made so the author could self-indulgently disparage Mario games for seemingly no reason. I have never in my life seen a game review that is this blatantly cynical. And the funniest part is, I know for a fact that the author only played this game for maybe 20 minutes. If they played it for longer than that, let alone got anywhere near endgame, the actual game design problems would illuminate themselves. I have played through this game 100%, probably 10 times in the last 6 months while working on this video. I am deeply familiar with this game's flaws. So here are my criticisms, which were created out of passion as opposed to obligation. So, as it stands, navigating Shroom City is really, really annoying. Rolling a low number, landing on a minus space, or encountering Koopa Kid are entirely based on random chance, so it often feels like I'm being punished for no fault of my own. This game loves random chance so much that there are 5 mandatory gambling games that you have to complete in order to beat the game. You just have to hope the odds will be in your favor 5 different times just so you can progress the story. If you haven't played this game before, you have no idea just how much of a nuisance the mushroom challenges can be. Let me explain. When navigating Shroom City, Mario's in a little car, and you roll the die, and then your car can move that many spaces. Every 3 dice rolls, the game screeches to a halt, and you have to play a randomly selected minigame. In my 4-hour playthrough of the game, I was interrupted by a mushroom challenge minigame 68 times. So on average, I had to play a minigame once every 3.5 minutes. Most of the minigames, they're fine, right? But because of the way Shroom City is set up, they don't end up being much fun at all. So for instance, look at this map, right? This is a quest from Goombob, where I have to go from his place all the way down here to the beach to get him a seashell. On the way there, I'm interrupted by 3 Mushroom Challenge minigames. I get the seashell, and then I'm interrupted by 3 more on the way back. I lost 15 minutes playing minigames that were imposed on me when I just wanted to focus on the task I was given. So forgive me for not being wide-eyed and excited about the minigames when they're so aggressively phrased as an obstacle. It's hard not to fantasize about what it would be like if the mushroom challenges just weren't there. But then things start to fall apart. If there's no mushroom challenges, then how do you refill the mushroom counter? If you can't refill your mushroom counter, then how do you roll the dice to move the car? Why is there even a car in the first place? Why can't Mario just run around on his own? Are these all just a million different artificial roadblocks in my way specifically to make getting from point A to point B as annoying and tedious as possible? And that's when it hit me. That's what literally every RPG does. Having a page turn action in your RPG is so commonplace. It's a staple of the genre. In most RPGs, it would be turn-based battling, but in this game, it's the Mushroom Challenge minigames. Yeah, I find the constant interruptions annoying, sure, but think about how much people claim to hate random encounters in RPGs. You would think, for such a dramatically disliked game design trope, that it wouldn't persist, but it does. And that's because it works. It builds anticipation, it provides variety, it gives a progressive feeling of growth. And getting to see what happens next in the story is your underlying motivation. If the minigames were less intrusive, the Mushroom Challenge concept could serve to highlight the story and make it feel more exciting after a grueling trek to get there. Maybe the game wouldn't be as fun if there was nothing in the way of Mario getting from place to place, and that's why the mechanics are the way they are. So my natural next step was to take matters into my own hands and try to fix the game. I can't remove the gambling and I can't make Mario run around on foot. The only thing that I can realistically fix is the balance between Shroom City's quests and the minigames. Right now, it's leaning way too far in favor of the minigames. So I increased the amount of mushrooms the player starts with from 3 to 15 and made it so that the minigames happen every 10 turns and pay out 10 mushrooms each instead of 3. And just from tweaking those numbers, the minigames went from being genuinely oppressive to manageable. It was like a breath of fresh air. They feel like more of a fun distraction since they're paced out so much more reasonably. And that change to the pacing saved an entire hour in my playthrough with seemingly no compromise. I was so happy with the facelift that I gave the game a fancy new title screen, and I put the patch up for download at planetclue.com/carnival. All you gotta do is apply it to a USA copy of Mario Party Advance, and you're good to go. I can't go too much into detail on the topic of modding Nintendo games or they'll take my video down, so let's get to the conclusion. Whether it's because the game was just too frustrating on the surface level, it didn't meet people's expectations, or because the bad reviews scared people off from the get-go, this bizarre, quirky little RPG was never given a fair chance. The game that's buried beneath the flaws and the politics is an avant-garde masterpiece. It's up there with the best of Nintendo's experimental era, and it is just as irreplaceable as Animal Crossing, Chibi-Robo, and Luigi's Mansion. I know it sounds weird for me to call this game a masterpiece after brutally criticizing it, but let me be crystal clear. The main course of the game, the character dialogue, is the masterpiece. That is the thing you should play this game for. The people that went into it thinking it was a party game and creating their judgments based on the quality of the minigames were doomed to have a bad time from the start. But everyone out there that's watching this right now and retrospectively going into it knowing that it's an RPG, I hope your expectations are better aligned to see how brilliant this game truly is. Thank you so much for watching. I released Mario's Carnival Quest like 3 months ago, and the people on my Patreon have had it since then, so go to patreon.com/clue if you want to see what I'm working on and get early access to cool stuff. Goodbye, Space Cadets. I will see you next month.